good evening, and welcome to our latest in conversation from Exeter Library. This evening we're delighted to be joined by author Kate Rhodes. These events are free, but if you'd like to give a donation to Libraries Unlimited, which is the charity that runs the 54 libraries and mobile libraries in Devon and Torbay, there is a link in the chat. We are also posting to 32 other libraries across Devon and Torbay this evening, from Tiverton to Torquay. So hello to all the other libraries watching. And if you'd like to ask a question, please pop in the chat and I will ask Kate. So introducing Kate. Kate was born in Greenwich in South London and now lives in Cambridge. She is a member of the crime writing group Killer Women and an award-winning writer of crime fiction and poetry. She began her writing career as a poet, winning the Bridport Prize and twice being shortlisted for the Forward Prize. In 2014, she won the Ruth Rendell Short Story Prize, and she has written 6 crime novels. That might be more now, actually, because it might have popped up a few more. And her Hell Bay series, which we'll be talking about this evening, is set on the Isles of Scilly, which is quite close to us here in Devon, and has been optioned for TV. Pulpit Rock is the 4th instalment in the D.I. Ben Kitto series. And Kate had a variety of jobs before becoming a writer. Her first job was an usherette in Greenwich Theatre, and followed by years as a sales assistant in a record shop, waitressing, and then finally going to university and completing a PhD, where afterwards she spent 2 years travelling and teaching in Florida and Texas before returning to the UK, where she has taught in 6th form colleges and universities. Kate also regularly contributes to panels at literary festivals. So a busy lady. So hi Kate, and thank you for joining us this evening. We're absolutely so pleased to have you with us.
Oh, hi Karen. I'm absolutely chuffed to bits, to be honest, because you wouldn't believe how many times we've been trying to get down to the West Country this year, and somehow or other COVID always gets in the way.
Yeah.
I got it, then my husband got it.
Oh no.
We've just either been having COVID or self-isolating pretty much the whole time. So.
Oh no. Oh, hopefully you'll get down soon, although it's probably just about to start being its busiest time now until September.
Yeah. Oh, I bet it will be. All these beautiful beaches. I think if I lived down there, I'd probably be very reluctant to share them.
I think some people probably are. So would you like to tell us a bit about Pulpit Rock, which I have got a copy of here, and it's out now in paperback?
Oh, yeah. My publicist said to me, hold it up to the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, not that I'm giving it a heavy promotion or anything. Yeah, I loved writing this book actually because it's set on one of my favourite islands. It's set on the island of St Mary's in Scilly. Have you been to Scilly?
I haven't, no. I would love to go. It looks beautiful.
It really is. I really recommend it. I mean, I started going there as a child when I was 7, and I can just remember, I suppose I was a real kind of really typical city kid. You know, he lived in a suburb of South London with a corner shop on the end of the street. And everybody was in each other's business all the time, playing in each other's backyards. So it was a nice, friendly area, but it was really built up. So when we got the train down to Cornwall, went all the way down to St Ives and got the boat for 3.5 hours to the Scilly Isles, it seemed magical, you know. And I think I really fell in love with Scilly because during my adult life, I mean, I've been back there almost every single year just to take another look at it. They're just this exquisite little group, this archipelago of granite islands in the Atlantic, about 45 kilometres off the Lizard, the coast of Cornwall. And there's something just absolutely unique about them. I mean, they're like the land that time forgot. Everything sort of moves at a slow pace. 3 out of the 5 islands don't have any cars or any roads.
Wow.
It'd be like walking, you're a bit stuffed really. So yeah, I mean, Pulpit Rock is set on the island of St Mary's, which is the biggest island. It's
8
miles long, and it does actually have cars. And it's got a population of about 1,500, which swells to about 2,000 during the summer season. But the lovely thing about St Mary's is that it's never busy. It's got a kind of finite capacity. You know, there's only a small number of hotels and guest houses, And when they're full, they're full. You know, when the campsite's full, that's it.
Yeah.
And bothering to go there really. So you've got to be booking ahead. But I saw, when I was there on a research trip, I saw an amazing spectacle, which is there's this incredibly beautiful rock formation on the southern tip of St Mary's, where this rock just protrudes out over a cliff towards the Atlantic, like a preacher kind of leaning over his lectern and looking at his congregation being the waves in this. And I saw a bride and bridegroom having their photos taken there. And it was a really beautiful, really sort of wild environment to see wedding photos being taken. And that was how I got started with the idea of brides. Brides are very vulnerable in Pulpit Rock. And somebody's got a real thing about white weddings, and are in for a very uncomfortable ride in this book. So yeah, I felt sad about bumping off a bride. There you are. It happened. Sorry about that.
I think that's a really interesting, because I was going to ask you like later on about what inspired you to write the book. So that's really interesting. And this book, Pulpit Rock, is the fourth in the Hell-based series, and features D.I. Ben Kitto. If anybody out there hasn't read the others, could you give us an overview, or can you read them as a standalone novel?
Yeah, you can read them as standalones, but if you start with Hell Bay and work your way through, then you've got a sense of a sequence really of things that happen in Ben's life, because Ben Kitto and D.I. Ben Kitto used to work in the murder squad in London, which I've written about a lot before, because I actually wrote 6 books based in London, where I come from, before starting these. So I've actually written, oh gosh, Pulpit Rock's actually my 11th novel.
Wow.
Kind of written so many, really. I don't quite know where they all came from. But,
is that the Alice Quinton ones, the other ones, the ones? Yeah.
Exactly. She's a forensic psychologist. So 6 books about a forensic psychologist, and now I'll be writing 7 or 8 at least about Ben. So I suppose I wanted to write about, it's the first time I've written a series with a man at the centre. And because I'm writing in the first person, I'm sort of in Ben's head a lot of the time, which was really interesting for me. He's a man in his 30s who's never felt quite at peace with the world, you know, for one reason or another. And he's had a pretty hellish experience in London, which has sent him off into a different sort of stratosphere. He's not certain if he can be a cop anymore when Hell Bay starts. And also he's got a real thorn in his side. One of his closest colleagues has sadly died and left him with a large dog to look after. So this dog, Shadow, this dog that he's sort of reluctantly taken on, is there. And Ben and Shadow are a pair. They stay a pair through the books. So the relationship between Ben and Shadow is one of the things that I love writing about, actually. If anybody's ever had a dog or likes dogs, like I do, I used to have a wolf dog like Shadow, and I'm certain he was smarter than me.
They're very intuitive, aren't they, dogs? I think, and I think that's, you know, Ben is a very popular character, isn't he? So do people sort of write to you and sort of say what's coming next, and you know,
he's well loved. I mean, I've been so lucky, really, although I'm not from the West Country, I've spent a lot of time in Cornwall and on the Scillies, and I know a lot of people there. And I was expecting everybody to say to me, how dare you write about a West Country lad and expect to get it right? But actually, people have been so generous and so nice about it. And every time I go to St Mary's, somebody marches up to me in the high street and tells me something that I ought to have Ben do, typical, or something that he should say. And I've made friends with the lovely librarian, actually, Linda Thomas.
Have you?
She's down on the Scillies. She's there. She runs the beautiful little library on St Mary's.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
It's an amazing job. Yeah, almost I think, Karen, another lovely part of the world. But yeah, she's a really good source of information. So every time I'm down there, I'll just sort of say, Linda, can I buy you lunch? and then we'll sort of chat about various things that have been going on the islands. Yeah, so I loved the idea that he's had an experience of London. He's had an experience of sort of the bright lights and the city.
Yeah.
He's gone back to the islands, and when he gets back there, he's completely mesmerized again by how beautiful they are. Yeah, it's funny. I didn't really realize when I was writing the books that people would take him to their hearts.
I think people do become quite they can become quite possessive of them as well. So if you do something that they don't like, they can get into all sorts of trouble. You said earlier on that you get inside his head. Do you feel that he's sort of part of you in a way now, because you've written about him for so much and you've got sort of plans to write about him more? Do you sort of feel very connected to him?
Funny, because I suppose I do really. I do feel very connected because I'm having to write from his perspective. I've been doing it for years now, and I'll be doing it for several more years. So I'm in Ben's shoes a lot of the time. And it is interesting trying to decide really in your mind as a writer whether there is a different perspective between men and women. I haven't had anybody yet, amazingly, I really was surprised by this. Nobody's written to me yet saying, he's not a man, he's a woman in disguise. Because obviously it's the first time I've written from inside a man's head.
Yeah.
But I've got 3 stepsons who are around and about Ben's age. So if I'm ever really struggling and thinking, what would Ben do in that situation? Or how would Ben ask that girl out? I just phone them up and say, what would you do in that situation? So,
what would Ben do?
Exactly, yeah. What would you do?
So when you've written the 2 series now, is that something, when you sort of started off writing, did you intend that to happen, or has that sort of just happened organically through the process of writing?
I suppose I was really lucky that I got invited to 6 books, you know, so just applied to do 1 really, and it just span out into a series that I really enjoyed. But after a while, I mean, I loved writing about my sort of home turf, my patch of South London that I know very well. But I also know the Scillys very well. I've been there so many times, and I suddenly thought, maybe I'll just take a holiday, you know, give my brain a rest and write a book set in Scilly. And another editor read the book and really loved it. And yeah, I got a contract for 7 books, which is amazing, really.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So I guess that you really get to know the characters when you're writing about them for that length of time.
Yeah, because they're set in such a tiny community. I mean, you also get to know Ben's uncle Ray, who's the island boat builder. You get to know his godmother Maggie, who runs the pub, and Steve, who's an ex-biker with a dark past. You know, you get to know everybody really on the island, and I think there's something. I love that when I go down to the islands myself, that you don't have to be there very long before you feel like you know people, because on Briar there are only 80 people living in the team, so it doesn't take very long if you're a chatterbox like I am to chat to everybody in the pub eventually.
So they all get to know you. I don't want to give any spoilers away about the book, but it does have, you mentioned the weddings, and it has a real twist, and Ben has to make some sort of really difficult choices in this book, doesn't he? So do you like writing the suspenseful parts of the books and the difficult parts of the book? Are they fun to write? Or
yeah, I mean, I'll be honest and say I love a good twist. I like to sort of leave the reader thinking, really? I didn't see that coming. If I'm, I suppose essentially they are whodunits. You've got to figure it out along this journey. Who could possibly have it in their mind to do these desperate things? And I think maybe the job of anybody who writes these kind of books is to confuse people.
Yeah.
And I'm always trying to be one step ahead. I'm sure I'm not.
Well, I mean, I didn't see this one coming, so you definitely got me. And I really like that. I always get a bit frustrated if I guess who it is. I'm a bit like, oh.
Me too.
That's a shame. I got it. That was too easy. I like it to be difficult.
I like it to be difficult. And I remember Ruth Randall, I heard her talking on the radio years ago before she sadly passed away. And she was saying, I just like to make up my mind towards the final part of the book, who the killer is. Up until that point, it could be anybody.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a good bit of advice from Dame Randall. I might hang on to it.
So when you said that you obviously visited the Scillys a lot and researched them, how do you you research the sort of the police side of it? Because obviously you've written 2 series, one about the forensic science, but also one about the police officer. Do you have sort of contacts? Do you sort of make it up? Do you sort of steer away from the really sort of detailed bits? I know other people have said that they sort of keep away from the really detailed things because they don't contact anybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mixture of. I mean, obviously, I've written to all the guys at the police station in St Mary's, and they think it's absolutely hilarious that I'm writing thrillers on a set of islands that haven't seen a murder for, I think it's 50 years.
Wow, really?
And I think I've bumped off about 18 people now. So they said, this is the murder capital of the world. They think it's absolutely hilarious. But they are very good at sharing info. And they've given me a ride in their van, which I'm very grateful for. So yeah, I've been all around the island in the van. But I think I make it, it's I think any novel, no matter how much research you do, it's a mixture of fact and fabrication, really.
Yeah.
My job as a writer is to tell a really good story. And, if I bend a few rules, police rules there, so shoot me, but yeah, I love Peter James. I like his writing. He's a too. And he actually employs an ex-policeman, an ex-detective inspector. He employs him at time, so he can pick up the phone at any time to say, would this happen? And I thought, that's a bit further than I want to go, really. But
yeah, I guess that's sort of for later in your career, isn't it? If you ever get to that.
I'm rich enough to employ another job. I'll be feeling pretty good, I think.
I mean, the island setting is so great, isn't it, though, for a crime story? And even though even though they haven't had a murder there for sort of 50 years, the fact that you could, and there's so many opportunities for the places for it to happen. And
also there's something, if a location really does seem sort of genuinely incredibly tranquil and everybody's incredibly relaxed, like I know for a fact that people don't bother to lock their doors or their cars or anything really in Scilly, because where are you going to run to? If you nick someone's car, someone's going to figure that one out pretty quickly. Yeah. It's 2 miles long. So yeah, it's a very, very relaxed place. There's something about that kind of ambience that makes it much, much darker when you introduce real fear to it, But the islands are kind of scary in some ways, in that I once got stuck on the island of Briar for a whole week during the winter.
Wow.
For a month to write my second book in this series, and I was staying in a cottage that I'd hired. And I went down to the little jetty where you catch the little boat across to St Mary's, and I thought, oh, those waves look pretty gigantic. And the ferryman said, there'll be no crossing today, love. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll just see if I can stay a bit longer at the cottage then. Went down every single day. There'll be no crossing today, love. That was it. I spent an extra week just looking at these huge seas.
Yeah.
Bishop's Rock Lighthouse.
Yes.
The one where the waves go right.
Yeah, right over the top. Yeah.
Like really astonishingly rough part of the Atlantic. That is only 3 miles away from Scilly.
Oh, really? Wow.
But, in winter you get some astonishing storms.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet it's really atmospheric there. And I imagine that's the type when you can sort of plan all the darkness. Probably in the summer when it's all blue seas and golden sands, it's not as...
It's no good to me at all.
No. You need the darkness, the dark corner where you can't see a hand in front of you, and the mist and the
mist and all the atmosphere. You got it. You should be one.
Oh, you never know. So
very
plot is very important in your novels, isn't it? So how do you, when you sort of start to write one of your novels, how do you sort of plan it? Are you a planner, or are you a sort of go as you?
It's a bit of a mix. I mean, I think when I start to write a book, I always write a one-page synopsis. I kind of know what the beginning, the middle, and the end are going to look like. But all the kind of permutations, all the kind of plot complications that make a book interesting, for me, they tend to be a bit more organic. I have the big picture in my mind when I set out. But if I plan it out too carefully, then it's boring for me. I need to be surprised myself sometimes.
Yeah.
I think sometimes if you know exactly where you're going, it comes over in the writing. It comes over as if you're sort of, it can be a bit tum-ty-tum if you don't. You've got to be slightly scared that you could drop all the plates that you're juggling.
yeah. I imagine that's, because I guess, like you said, if you had it might read a bit more sort of encyclopedic if you were like, and they did this and they did this and they did this, and and that's the sort of, I don't want my thrillers to be like that. I want to be surprised. So,
and there's nothing better for that than if the writer's a bit shocked as well.
Sorry.
I didn't expect that character to return in that book, but they just kind of pop up, and that's it. You're stuck with them.
Yeah, and hopefully it's ones that you like rather than ones you don't like. I suppose that might happen though sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes really annoying ones too.
I've got a couple of questions or a couple of comments from our Facebook audience. So Fiona has said, brilliant book, as is the whole series, and she can't wait for the next one.
Oh, that's really lovely. That's so lovely. Thank you, Fiona, wherever you are. I'm so chuffed by that. I'm afraid I'm definitely one of those writers who reads all their reviews, because I think I can learn something from them, all of them, good and bad. It was a bit heartbreaking when you get a bad one, so it's lovely to get a good one.
Yeah, I imagine that must be really hard. It's like someone sort of like saying your child's not very nice or something.
No, it's true, actually. It's a really weirdly personal thing. With your work.
Yeah.
But actually, sometimes people say things that are really insightful, and you can learn.
And I imagine, some people read so many sort of books, crime and thrillers, that I guess that they sort of have their opinions, and whether that's useful to you or not is good.
There's a lot of really, really expert readers out there. So never take a review lightly. My husband says it's stupid of me. He just says,
he's just trying to protect you, I expect, because if they're not very nice, it must be quite hard to see you sort of.
Caught me blubbing a couple of times over.
Oh.
The worst one, just tell you this quickly. The worst one for me was I got a 1-star review for somebody. And she'd given it a 1-star review because the book was torn when it arrived.
I've seen those on Amazon, they're awful.
I thought, thanks for that. With my review average.
I've seen those. Or they didn't like the cover was different to what they'd seen on the internet or something. I've seen one, so poor you. So Serena has asked, so she says, good evening, Karen and Kate. Does Kate ever think she may move away from crime writing anytime soon?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question, because I've kept up my teaching over the years, and I love teaching. I think I'd really miss it if I didn't do any teaching at all. So this year, for example, I've done 2 days teaching a week, because I think maybe if I was 100% committing my time to writing, you can disappear into your own imagination and become a bit strange. If you spend too much time alone with your characters. And something lovely also about I work with other writers. So it's great to share your skills and chat to people who are trying to do the same stuff. Just keeps your feet on the ground, really. So I think if anything was going to tempt me out of being a writing in this late stage of my career, because I'm 56 now, I haven't got that much of a teaching career to go, I guess. But if anything was going to tempt me, it would be going back to teaching, actually.
Would it? Yeah.
Especially sixth formers. They are all lovely.
Yeah, I used to work in a school, and I've just recently gone back to reading at school, and I love it. I think there's something really lovely about sharing.
Magic.
Yeah.
People always say, schools, sixth form colleges, really hard environments. But actually, it isn't always that hard. Sometimes it's a real pleasure.
So, talking about pleasure, what do you like reading for pleasure?
I read really widely, actually. I've got to say. I mean, I've just been reading Jane Austen again, just for pleasure. But the couple of books that I mentioned to you recently, the crime books that I've been reading, are ones that I wanted to read twice because they were so good. One of them is Anatomy of a Scandal by Sarah Vaughan, and the other one is Louise Candlish's book, Our House. And it's quite interesting. I didn't know when I picked these books up that both of these authors were former journalists. But there's something about the ease, the beauty of their writing style that comes, I think, from doing huge amounts of writing.
Yeah.
So confident, their writing styles, I think.
Well, Sarah's actually an Exeter girl, so we've had her had her in the library, and also we've interviewed her on one of our In Conversations. But I think, yeah, she is lovely. And Anatomy of a Scandal, I think, is being filmed, isn't it, at the moment for a Netflix show, which is fantastic.
I can't wait to see that, actually, because it's this real kind of push-pull drama between these two women who've got such a vested interest in whether or not this really unpleasant crime.
Oh, he is really unpleasant, isn't he?
Yeah, it's pretty awful. And yet when you meet her, she's just the gentlest person in the world.
She is lovely. She's she did I remember that she said she'd done some of her A-level revision in the library in Exeter, so when she was before she went to university. So yeah, it's lovely when we have sort of people, you know, homegrown people that go off to be wonderful writers. So yeah, no, I'm very excited, and also that book is very topical at the moment, isn't it? So you know,
it's a really good book for the Me Too generation.
Definitely.
I have to say, actually, I think it's a real feminist book as well, to be honest.
And Louise Candish, I haven't read did you say Our House? Sorry.
Yeah.
But I did read The Skylight, which was her quick reads book.
Really? Would you recommend it?
Yeah, it's really good. It's only like a little one, but she's also got a new one coming out called The Heights, which I got a copy of yesterday. So I'm very much looking forward to that one.
I didn't get a copy. I'm going to be onto them to give me one.
She's a great writer as well.
Yeah, she's a real favourite of mine. But there's something about I'd really strongly recommend Our House, because it's so chilling, the start of that book. You know, you work hard, you try and buy a house, and you really think it's yours. But in this book, this couple come back to the house and somebody's taken it over. It's no longer theirs.
Oh, wow.
They've literally, it's like a cuckoo pushing them out of their nest. Their whole identities have been subsumed by this couple. So it's a really, really interesting, it's a real kind of psychological, it's really torturous, actually, to read what they go through, but it's fascinating.
Yeah, so The Skylight's a bit like that. You're a bit like, whoa, and then you think, well, actually that could really happen. It's just it's so, yeah, you think it's so dark and twisted it couldn't happen, but actually in reality it really could. And I think that's what makes it even more frightening, isn't it? It's that it really could.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, it sort of seems very real that, you know, we're constantly being told to be careful because online our identities could be stolen quite easily, couldn't they?
Definitely.
Actually having your identity stolen right out from under you and your house.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
I can't tell you, I've only got a tiny little humble house, but I'd be lost without it.
So how did you come into writing? So you said that you've done teaching for a long, was that how you sort of came into it and entering stories, and you're also a poet, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I'll be honest and say I don't think if I go right back to the start of things, English was the only subject that I enjoyed at school, really. So left school early, left school at 16, and was a shop assistant for 8 years. But kind of got back into the idea of studying through evening classes and eventually doing an access course, and then going to Essex University to do English was like a big adventure for me. Maybe because I was a bit older than the other students, I really realised that I was lucky to be there. I really worked hard and really enjoyed it. So I think maybe there's something fantastic about doing an English degree, which is why it really annoys me when the government or any government says that arts degrees aren't worth anything. Because actually, without my arts degree, without my English degree, I would be nothing, I think. I spent 3 years reading, and that's the very best way to become a writer, I think, by reading other people's books.
Absolutely, everybody says that, don't they? That, you know, to be a writer, you need to be a reader.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I think I started to write when I became an English teacher. I used to set the kids creative writing exercises to do, and I would try and write alongside them, really. And I just got into writing short poems and funny poems and serious poems as well at that time, and really enjoyed it and thought, oh, you know, maybe I'll go and do an Avon Foundation course. And you've got a lovely centre.
We do, yes. Totley Barton, yeah, that's it, yeah.
Where I went to Totley Barton near Oakhampton in beautiful Devon, and I had the most amazing week. And it made me think, I should just give it a bit more of a go, really. Yes, it was really gradual, the journey towards having the confidence, I think, writer, because you've got to kind of, if you're going to write a book, you've got to believe you can write a book. And that's the bit that I think people struggle with, the belief that you can do it.
It's a big thing, isn't it? And also putting your work out there for somebody else to read is, like you said, it. And if people don't like it or they critique it, it's really difficult. So you have to, I guess you must have come to a point where you were like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah, you've got to kind of man up, if you like. You've got to sort of be tough, and I'm not particularly tough. So there were a lot of tears along the way when I sent things to agents. And I did have one absolutely spectacularly terrible experience when I sent it to a really posh My Little Writing Effort to a London agent. And he disliked it so much that he bothered to phone me up and tell me and how much what a waste of his time it had been. So yeah, kind of all of these things toughen you up along the journey. But yeah, even that was a learning experience. It made me realise I needed to raise my game. But when I met him about 6 years after that, at an author's dinner, I had to tell him just how destructive I thought that had been. I was really shocked, actually, because I sometimes think with bullies that actually, if you just prick their bubble, actually they're quite vulnerable people, aren't they?
Yeah. And it probably just thought he just got away with doing it for so long that he probably thought it was okay. But actually, when you sort of stood up to him and said, no, that's not okay, he was like, oh, okay.
I felt a bit nervous walking up to him because he's quite a big, I'm not going to say his name so I get in trouble, because he was quite a big, eminent London agent with very famous authors in his stable, and very, very pompous, it has to be said. He'd given a speech at this author's dinner, and I think he thought I was going up to him to say, what a lovely speech. But actually, I just went up to him and said, you know, I got a lovely writing contract through a different agent, that you almost stopped me in my tracks. You almost stopped me from being a writer by being so cruel, really. So cruel. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not necessary, is it?
No, it really isn't. No.
So we've got just 3 minutes left, which I did say to you at the beginning, it goes really quickly.
Karen, I told you I was a windbag. And
no, not at all. So what do you have planned next?
Well, right now I'm writing the 7th book in the Scilly Isles series, and I'm absolutely loving it. It's called Hangman Island, and it's set on a really, really minute island, which is between the islands of Briar and Tresco. The body washes up on Hangman Island. Oh, reader beware.
And when is that one out, Kate?
That's not out for absolutely ages. The next one that's out is in October. And that's going to be
right, yeah, because this one came out in October, didn't it, in hardback?
That's right. Yeah, they come out each October. So yeah, it's really weird the way the publishing world works. That while you're kind of getting the 5th one onto the bookshelf, you're
right. Yeah,
number 7. You know. Yeah.
So will 7? Did you say 7, or will 7 be the last, or?
yeah, I've got the choice really to write some more, and I'm enjoying it so much at the moment. And it's such a good excuse to keep going down to Scilly that I think I may write some more. Actually, can't
That
leave
sounds like a big plan, doesn't it?
It's certainly a good plan to go down to Scilly anyway.
Yeah. So you have to book, like you said, quite far in advance to go there, don't you? So it's not like you can just sort of like rock up. You have to.
Yeah, exactly. You can actually go over for a day trip, which always seems extraordinary. Some people want to go over 3.5 hours on a boat, sometimes a very rough crossing, and then get back on that same boat to go back to St Ives.
Yeah.
I wouldn't fancy it personally. I think it's better to look at what's available and book something if you
Does
can.
the helicopter still go over? The helicopter used to go from Penzance, didn't it?
There was one absolutely terrible crash actually in the 80s that put me off the helicopter. But there's never been an accident since.
No, I remember seeing it when we were down in Penzance when my children were little, and we'd go down there, and I remember seeing it taking off and thinking, oh, that looks really exciting.
Really exciting and really loud. But you know that you can fly from Exeter.
Can you?
So get yourself down Exeter Airport.
Yeah. Oh, I might have to do that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Kate, for joining us this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I shall show up Pulpit Rock again. So Pulpit Rock is out now in paperback. And if you'd like to read any of Kate's books, they are available on the Devon Library's website, and there's a link in the chat for that. Our next In Conversation is a daytime one, which is on Tuesday, the 27th of July. And it's 3 debut young authors, and the event is called Putting Pen to Paper. And they are Xanthe Barker, Francesca Rees, and Hazel Barkworth. I get my words out. And all the details of the upcoming events are on our Facebook page. And if you enjoyed this event, please like our page and leave us some feedback. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you. Well, thank you again, Kate. It's been great talking to you, and you've definitely inspired me to visit the Scillys. And I'm sure other people as well who've been listening will be looking at their holiday brochures, because it's not very far away from us at all. So
it really isn't, and it's so quiet and lovely. That's what you need.
So I hope you do get to come down to Devon and Cornwall and the Scillys this year.
We've got our plans booked for October, so I'm just hoping that we get to come this time.
Well, hopefully, fingers crossed for you. And we look forward to your next book out in October.
Thanks, Karen. It's been lovely. Really enjoyed it.
Great. Thank you, Kate.
You take care. Thank you.
And you. Bye-bye.